Right, okay, for this video, all you need is a sheet of A4 paper to start with, a pencil and a ruler. I'd suggest also getting a rubber because you may make a mistake or two and you need to rub that out. So what do? Well, I have my sheet of A4. So the first thing I do is I'm going to look roughly for the middle and pop a little dot in it. Teeny tiny dot in the middle just there. Okay. Once I've done that, I'm going to then draw some shapes around it. Now I'm going to make sure there's plenty of space with my shapes away from the dots. So I'm going to have a shape here. Here it is. And then I'll be drawing several other two-dimensional shapes, very similar to that square, all the way around the dot. So eventually it should look like this. So here are my two-dimensional shapes I've put around there. Some of them are regular, some of them are irregular. So what am I going to do next? Well, it still focuses around the dot. And the next thing you're going to do is very, very lightly with your pencil is draw a line from the dot to each one of the corners on each square. So let me have or on each rectangle, or on each triangle, or on each irregular shape. So if you go, here's my first one, drawing a very, very light line on each one. Here's my next one. And there we have it there. Then I'm going to draw a very faint line that way. And a very faint line that way. And then do the same for back to the rectangle. Very faint line coming down. And a very faint line coming down here. So you can see that already my shapes are beginning to look a little bit more three-dimensional. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around and do all the others rather than you watch me. And in the end, when I finish, it should look like this. So as you can see, there are all my three-dimensional shapes. And they all look like they're disappearing into a vanishing point. Okay, and that's what we have created there. That is called one-point perspective. And everything disappears right down into the middle of that one point. But what it does give us is an excellent opportunity to make lots and lots of three-dimensional shapes in lots and lots of different fashions. So the first one I'm going to have a look at is this one here. You'll see that these shape lines that I did originally are nice and dark because I did them thickly. These lines are nice and light, as I've said, so I can rub them out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line here along, and because I'm following it in parallel to the line that I've made here, so it's in parallel, so it's going to be copying that line exactly in its direction. And then I'm going to do the same with this line. I'm going to copy it in parallel, so if I go straight up it won't look right. If I follow the parallel lines down, start from here and follow it in a parallel fashion, then I'm going to have the same effect here. And straight away I've started making a three-dimensional shape. Look a bit more detailed. And then I'm going to get my rubber and then do this. Here it is, and then the rubber will come down. And I'm just going to take away those corners there. And I've been able to make myself a three-dimensional shape that way. Okay, if I have a look at the bottom one, where I've got this kind of irregular quadrilateral, I follow the line in parallel. So here I'm able to use the ruler, line it up against the line I've made, line it up there. So I've got a nice parallel line there. And then I want to follow that line in parallel there with the original side of the shape here. And then I've been able to make myself a three-dimensional shape. So again, I can rub that clean. And gently rub that away, and I've made myself another three-dimensional shape. It looks quite solid looking. So what about some of the others? I mean, I could do exactly the same for this one and draw a line up and then draw a line across. But here I've got something a bit more interesting going on here. Here I want to see if I can make a three-dimensional shape that is transparent, so it looks like it's made from glass, a bit more see-through. Okay, so to do that, I need to draw the lines in parallel again. So I'm going to draw this one over, so it's in parallel with this line. So this line is in parallel with this one, and I'm going to look to do the same with this line here. So I'm going to make that my base going along here, and there it is. I've made that in parallel with that, and then quite simply I draw this line to meet this one, and then this line to meet this one, and suddenly I've started making myself a three-dimensional looking shape. I can get rid of the bottom lines here, and I've started to make myself something that looks quite glass-like. So I can make that a little bit darker, make that edge darker, make the outside edge of this one very dark, and this one just a touch darker. So I've now got a transparent look to that particular shape. And if I wanted, I could then shade the bottom part there, the bottom face of the shape, much darker, and that will help with our perspective of the shape. And if you remember the way I shaded it just there, I laid the flat of my pencil down, and then instead of using the point, I used the flat of the lead, and that gives a much more even colour. So now I've got a much darker base at the bottom, a much lighter base at the top. I can shade each face slightly differently and give that three-dimensional effect. Now let's go for a great big rectangle. So I go for a great big rectangle here, quite an easy one. Up it goes, and then across and down, and there I've been able to make a huge rectangle turn into a huge cuboid. And then we move that across, and it looks like it's disappearing into the distance there, as well as being quite transparent. So we've got different effects that we have on these different parts. This one I'm going to leave going all the way into the distance, so it looks like this shape is transparent and then just vanishes all the way through, like it's made from a never-ending glass. So we end up with a never-ending prism there, triangular prism. And then finally I'll look at this shape, and again I think I'm going to have this one slightly different effect. I'm going to run the line parallel as I've done with the others, so it goes up there but much thinner, and then run the line parallel again. So that line is parallel to that one is parallel to that, and then I can rub that clean, and we have here some very, very interesting shapes which you can then start to use your shading skills on. So you could shade one face in one colour, then another, and that would produce a nice effect there. You could do different shades of grey with these translucent ones, so you could shade one ever so gently, ever so lightly, using those different shading techniques that I've taught you before Christmas. And so you've got a nice effect there, and then do the next shade slightly darker, so you can really see, using the flat of the pencil, really see the different shapes, and then it will look like it's disappearing off into the distance, very much like we have so here. And then follow that down. Here we go, very gently when I get to the sides, very slow, because I don't want to go over to the edges and then have to start rubbing lots out. Keeping in the lines. Here we go. So we have a different effect there. And you can colour those and use those in as many different ways as you want. Have a go yourself, see what you come up with. If you can imagine that you can do this, then you can imagine a letter T. If you did a letter T, do the same effect. Or a letter E, the same effect here, zooming down. And then once you get used to that and experiment a little bit, you'll be able to see that there's lots and lots of different ways you can take this, because those cuboids could rapidly become buildings. So if you were to change the perspective round, you could, if you wanted, start putting little windows in, a little door, and you start to see the effect there in your drawings where you're accurately recreating buildings of different types, okay, or even roofs, pyramids. Okay, have a go and see what you come up with.